So here's some mullen growing up alongside my house. This is 2025's growth. You can see why sometimes the mountain men preferred to use this for toilet paper. It does work. So driving up into the mountain today, there's a mullen stalk. You don't see the leaf coming out of the ground like what's behind my house, but if you know what to look for, the stuff grows abundantly if you know what to look for. And in particular where there's a fire that's gone through, it seems like once the forest floor is cleaned up, this what seems to grow back first. So I'm going to harvest this and see how it makes gunpowder. So here's an area that burnt, and you can see even in the distance the mullen has grown. So I should be able to harvest more than enough mullen just out of this little spot to do my little test making homemade black powder, with this being the source of charcoal. So moving to another spot, here's an area that had quite a bit of fire coming through it, and if you can look and try to zoom in, you can see all the mullen that's in that area. It's quite a bit. And if you guys want to see what some of the health benefits are of mullen, just go on YouTube and type in health benefits of mullen. I have personal experience with smoking the mullen leaf once it's dried out to get rid of some of the phlegm in my lungs, or having lung issues. That's my own personal experience with it. But the stuff grows everywhere if you know what to look for. So obviously, I gathered more than enough mullen to test this as a charcoal source for black powder. Now, it's got to be admitted that there's going to be a little bit of work in cleaning this up and getting it processed for the char can. And I get it. It might be a lot more work than what it's worth. I got no problem admitting that, but what kind of black powder, gunpowder, is it going to make in the end? Well, unless you experiment with this stuff, you'll never know. But I will tell you, from like survival channels, reading some of my stuff years ago in Muzzleloader magazine, a lot of people like using this for fire drills. And there's a very good reason for it. Okay, if you look in the inside of this, let me see if I can get the camera and get this a little bit more in the light for you. It's real windy out there, so that's why I'm kind of doing this right here. But if you look on the inside of the mullen stem, it's kind of pithy. Now right now, because this is dried out, it's pretty solid. I mean, I can take my thumbnail, and it really doesn't compress that easily. So it does become more solid as the stem dries out. And that's the reason why I think, the true purists like using this for bow drill. Now, I've only ever done it once in my lifetime, and for me, it's too much work. Even when I was younger and was able to do it much more efficiently, but right now it's so much easier for me to just use flint and steel and start a fire that way. But inevitably, someone's going to say, well, I don't use flint and steel. I carry one of these. Yeah, I do now also. But let's see what this actually does. Might give us some sort of indication of how it might work for charcoal. catches and burns pretty quick. Of course, this is high intensity spark. Thank you, Jonathan. So what I'm going to do, just for experimental purposes, just let this char a little bit and rub it with my finger and see. I would say it's a little on the dirty side, but there again, over-charring it might make it dirty. Now I did find a piece out there. I don't know how well the camera's picking it up right now, but this has gone through a little bit of a fire. Okay, I don't know if you can see the charring on it. Better yet, let me get it back out in the sun. Hopefully you can see that a little better. Let me clean my finger off and rub this charred surface. Yeah, it's not as bad as it was just a moment ago. So I'm curious to see. So obviously I got a lot of process to do before I begin to char this. So I guess just stay tuned. So as I clean some of this up, on the thicker pieces at least, it's got a good thicker outside, bark. I don't want to really call it a bark. I don't know but it's an outer layer that seems to be pretty thick, along with that very strong, pithy inside. So as I scrape this down, some of you have asked if I've ever made gunpowder out of bamboo, and the answer is no. But quite honestly, bamboo is just a grass, isn't it? Very tight grained grass. But as I break this stuff up to put it in the char can, get you some pieces here, it kind of breaks up in splinters like a bamboo would, like a grass. If you can see that. So I'm kind of anxious to see how this is really going to work out as a gunpowder. But until I make the gunpowder and try it, we won't really know. But in all reality, if this is really the only source you have, whether it makes a good gunpowder or a bad gunpowder that burns dirty, it is, or it could prove to be, a viable source. But you'll have to stay tuned to see if it is or not. I have to keep working at it to see if it is or not. So not knowing if this stuff would char up evenly or not, and not wanting to over char it, I went ahead and stopped it at this point, and as you can see, it's not all charred, but some of it is. So I'm going through right now and taking out the pieces that seem to be properly charred and putting those in my container to bust it up. And that's one of the things that I think helps make good gunpowder, is not over charring your material. That's just my personal observation. Alrighty, so what would one of my DIY black powder videos be if I didn't put the mullen in a glass jar and see how it compares to known specific gravities? Willow, right here, 0.39, and you can see how much 15 grams occupies in that jar. And we all know that willow burns dirty based on the volume of 75 grams of potassium nitrate. Here's the mullen. So you can see that this is a little heavier because it occupies less. So I'm guessing it's probably in the low 40s, 42, 43 maybe. That's just a guess. Here's my peanut shell. And we figured that was around, 50 or so. And here's my juniper that most of the websites claim it to be low to medium, when I mix this with the alligator bark, this is both a mixed alligator bark and juniper, I'm guessing it's between 48 and 50. So we get rid of the peanut shell, which obviously is heavier, and we know that burns really good, and put that next to the mullen. We can see that the mullen's got to be somewhere between 0.39 and 0.48 to 0.50, depending on what graph or whose information you draw from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the peanut shell back into its respective container, and I'll put 75 grams of potassium nitrate in this jar, and then we'll see how that compares with the 3 jars that are left in front of you. So there's your 75 grams of potassium nitrate, and we all know that when that's mixed with 15 grams of willow, it does consume it, but it's dirty. We know, at least I know from my testing, that 75 grams of potassium nitrate does consume that much juniper, and it burns cleaner than the willow does. I put this next to the potassium nitrate, which is the mullen. It's going to be enough to consume it, but I think it's going to be a little on the dirty side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the mullen at that same level, and I'm going to put another 2 to 3 grams of potassium nitrate. It's not going to come up to the same level as the mullen, but the extra 2 or 3 grams should help consume this cleanly. That's just my hypothesis. Until we get this all mixed up and shot through my long gun, my flintlock, we won't know for sure. So stay tuned. So for all the years that I've lived on this property, I've never ever seen these barberry trees, bushes, whatever, this full of flora. And I'm thinking, holy cow, there's going to be a lot of fruit, barberry, produced this year. It's got a really good sweet taste, and the bugs like them too. You got to kind of get to them before the bugs do. The berry will be ready probably end of July, I'm thinking, if I remember correctly. But man, I'm just so overwhelmed with the flora that's on these barberry bushes. I hadn't really planned on testing this gunpowder at this point with the mullen. It's been milling for 10 hours, and from past experience, I'm already of the mind it's not milled enough to facilitate a good clean burn. But since I was checking on it, I thought I'd do it just for the hell of it. Milled 10 hours. As you can see, it still does burn slow. But let me get you a close-up of the block just to be consistent. Well, as you can see, at 10 hours it burns pretty slow. I gotta be honest with you, even at 10 hours, and I'm probably jumping the gun, pun intended, but that's what the block looks like. I would say, even at 10 hours, that's a pretty clean burn, and I don't see the little chunks of KNO3 in there, like I typically point to. Now, I will tell you, when I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm going to go maybe 2-3 more grams of potassium nitrate. I went up to 78. So this particular burn is 78, 15, 11. And once again, I'm of the mind that when you look at the 75, 15, 10, that 15 grams of your charcoal can make a difference as to whether this is going to be clean burning, dirty burning or not, because you're not really comparing, the 75, 15, 10 to what they represent volume wise. And that's why I'm an advocate of when you're going to test your homemade gunpowders against a factory gunpowder, match the weight, because this is going to be a lot lighter. But let's just do the finger rub. Let me rub it again dry, because I'm even curious as to why I don't have that much charcoal on my finger. Let me see if I get enough left to do a wet test. That's clean from my perspective. I'm really anxious now to try this gunpowder out when it's been milled, 30 to 36 hours and shot down through my muzzle loader. But stay tuned, because there's more test burns to follow. Here's a smaller bush. I'm going to try to get up and get you close up. This thing is just absolutely loaded with berries. Let me walk around to the other side. Impressive. Just absolutely impressive. So now, here's the 20-hour burn test. That went up pretty quick for just the powder. Let me get you close up of the block. There's the block. I'd say it's pretty clean, actually, for being a weed. Dry finger rub. I'd say it's pretty clean. I really would. Let me get the wet finger rub. Still pretty clean. Alright, I'll see you in about 30 hours. Stay tuned. Okay, here we are with the 30-hour burn test. And I've decided that I'm going to end the mill time right here at 30 hours, just simply because of what I've been able to observe. Okay, when I did the 20-hour burn test, I took all the powder out of the mill jar and run it through the screen just by shaking it with the lead media. And when I look at that, it still remained in powder form. Okay, so then I went up to 25 hours, and then I did the same thing, dumped it out of the mill jar and pushed it through the screen, worked it through the screen, and I began to notice that the clumps were staying more compacted. They weren't breaking up into the powder. Okay, so at 25 hours, every hour up to 30 hours, I did the same thing. At 29 hours, when I shifted it through the screen, it remained little tiny clumps of gunpowder and ball. Whatever went through here remained compacted. So now I'm going to do this right at the 30 hour, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I just dumped the lead media and whatever was loose. Because this lid fits very tight, I actually have to take a little block of wood and work it around, so whatever has been knocked loose is already in the screen. But that's the rest of it on the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to knock that out, put it in the screen, and then I'm going to sift it, and I'll show you, what the little balls are that I'm talking about. I haven't finished yet, but you guys can look at that and see how well, compacted that gunpowder is. You can see how it's all clumped together in these little tiny balls. And that's nothing more than just pushing it through that screen. There's the block. You can note how clean it looks right now. There's 20 grains of that powder. I'm going to lay it out in a straight line. And I'm only doing this just to remain consistent, and for those that are just now learning how to do black powder, make your own black powder, and haven't seen any of my other videos, this is just what I do as a matter of fact, a standard, so that I can kind of judge what it's going to do in the long run. Okay, 20 grains, homemade gunpowder with what I will call Mountain Man toilet paper. As you can see, even at the 25-hour powder burn, it went up very, very quickly. That's why I'm done milling it. But let me get you close up of the block. Well, once again, guys, very, very clean burning. Dry finger rub. I'd say it's clean. Very, very clean burning. Now the wet finger rub. I'd say it's pretty clean, you know, compared to when I did that burn test, when I blended everything left over. That stuff was very, very dirty. This is clean. And again, it's wet. Give it a moment or two to dry out, and it's going to be even, it's going to appear even cleaner. I'm impressed with it thus far. So I guess next portion of this video will be me testing it once it's pucked and grained to the 2,3F that I normally grain it to, and then we'll go out and test and see what kind of velocities we can get with Mountain Man toilet paper. Okay, so here we are with the 30 grain burn test of the mullen. It's already grained to my normal 2,3F with a little bit of what some people would consider 4F in the mixture. I have a clean block, so let's see how it performs. We've already seen it performs pretty good just out of the ball mill. It burns really clean, but now that I'm adding an extra 10 grains to this burn test, let's see if it remains a clean burning gunpowder. Here we go. That went up pretty quick. Alright, let me get you close up of the block. That sun and the smoke is just right to be wrong. Alright, there's a close up of the block. I would say that that's pretty clean burning, but I have something else to note. The KNO3 that's left behind is even in smaller particles than what I've seen most of my gunpowder with this length of milling time. I know you probably can't pick it up. I've shown blocks before at this type of angle to where you could pick up, you know, the minute pieces of KNO3, but in my opinion this is even smaller pieces. Okay, all right, let's do the dry rub test. It's pretty clean. Now remember, I'm burning 10 more grains than my previous burns, at least the previous one when I did it with 20 grains just out of the ball mill. Okay, so I'm saying that's pretty clean. Let me clean my finger off. Nothing like sulfur in the morning. A little darker, but there again, it's wet. when this dries off, it's probably going to be a lot lighter in color. So, I guess the next test is going to be, what's the weight to volume of this gunpowder? Be right back at you. So we've come to the portion of the video where I want to do the weight to volume test. Having already zeroed out the scale, I'm going to weigh out 80 grains of this gunpowder and see how much it occupies in the powder measure. Okay, she's level. Put that into the powder measure, settle it like I normally do because I don't do my chargers static. Alright, let's see how much volume this actually occupies. Okay, as you can see, I'm level to the top. And looking at, let me get into a little better light. So if you can see that reflecting in the sunlight, it looks like she's occupying about maybe 84, 85 grains by volume. So I'm going to leave that right there because that's what I'm going to be shooting through my flintlock. Now let me explain something else. Okay, so I'm going to take my other measurer and I am going to set it at 80 grains. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure what this true difference is. Or weigh it, I should say. So I'm going to get them up to 80 grains by volume. Settle it. Bit much. Okay, as you can see, I'm at the top. I'm 80 grains by volume. And that's how much gunpowder is left over in the pan. So let's weigh this. She is at 6 grains even. Okay. So, based on what I've been doing over the several years, testing the volume of your charcoal in those glass jars, because that's truly the real variant in homemade black powder, is what the specific gravity is of your charcoal source and how much volume it occupies. Okay? And based on what I observed in this video, I would have expected this gunpowder by weight to occupy more by volume than what it actually did, because it was a larger amount of charcoal. Okay, but thinking about this, what did I do with this particular batch of gunpowder? Based on the volume, I added 3 more grams of potassium nitrate. So this formula is 78, 15, 11. Now, based on that added weight of the potassium nitrate that's being mixed in with that volume of charcoal, got me pretty close to what some of the other gunpowders I produce with a much higher specific gravity. Even the hickory, remember when I did the hickory video? That was much closer to 80 grains as opposed to what the willow was at 90 grains per weight and volume. So these are some of the things that, you know, if you're going to experiment with this, keep these things in mind. And this is why when I want to test my homemade gunpowder, I want to match the weight to the factory gunpowder, because I've showed in the past 80 grains of 3F Swiss actually weighs about 7 grains more per volume to weight. So if you're going to test your homemade gunpowder, say against Swiss, then you need to be mindful of those that added weight that the heavy graphite glazing would add to that. Well, that's why I add the weight to the volume, just to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. But with that having been said, and as you can see, I've got 2 powder measures that are identical. When I get out to test this gunpowder, I will give you 5 shots with this powder measure that is at about 95 or 96 actually, or whatever it ends up being. And then I'm going to turn around and give you 5 shots out of this powder measure that was 80 grains by volume. Because in the past, some have left comments underneath this channel saying, well, those few grains don't really matter. Well, let's test and see if that comment is accurate, and how many more feet per second are we going to get by comparing the weight to volume as opposed to just strictly volume with this gunpowder in particular. So you'll need to stay tuned for that. Well, you guys see it like I do. What is it, 1813? Alright, let me go see if I can recover the patch. Well, there's the patch. It's not shredded like some of the others, but with the low 18s, I might have expected that perhaps. But first impressions, it's still very, very wet from my spit. I'd say it's a little on the dirty side compared to some of the other patches I've shown being the first shot. But like I typically say, I want to see how it loads after the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th shot and see if I can notice any loading difficulties like I did with that gunpowder in the previous video that I blended all the gunpowders together. Those were very dirty. Alright, I'll get reloaded and get another number. 1775. Well, I found the second patch, still wet, still damp, and I'd really say it's no different than that first patch. To me, they both look about the same. Alright, I'll get reloaded and get another shot. And in case you're interested, it's about 9:45. I can't get you a rightful temperature because right now my temperature gauge is in the direct sun and it's reading above 80, and I know it's not 80 yet. It's going to get warm today, but it ain't right now. Alright, I'll get reloaded and get you another number. Well, I hope that close-up turned out. 1802. Well, there's the third patch. I would dare say it's no more dirtier than the first or second patch. And it's still damp. Alright, let me get reloaded, get another number. 1810. 1812. So I'm going to go ahead, swap out targets, get repositioned. I got the chronograph in the shade right now. Shot number 5. It's no dirtier than shot number 1. Now, since I'm not going to clean the barrel with this next shot, you need to know that the next 5 shots, as I mentioned previously, are going to be static. I'm not going to settle it. It's just going to be static just to satisfy my own curiosity and for those that leave comments and say, well, a couple grains don't really matter. Well, we'll see. And just to reiterate, if you can see it in the sun reflecting, I'm right at 80 grains by volume, and I'm not going to settle it. What is that, 1640? I got the sun just right to be wrong. Let me go get a close-up. Well, I found that patch. It's a tad bit cleaner. And that would stand to reason because I'm burning less powder per volume. This is just a static charge instead of 80 grain by weight settled. But look at the feet per second difference. Quite a bit of difference, but that's just one shot. $15.45. $15.29. I find it interesting that my velocities right now are very comparable with my Alignment Great Plains with a 10-inch shorter barrel than this. Alright, we'll mark off the target. See if I can find that patch. I didn't find the previous patch. Get you a couple more numbers. Well, I found that patch. It's no different than the others. You might be curious, what have I got? 5, 6, 7, 8 shots, and I'm not experiencing any loading problems whatsoever. Alright, get ready to shoot another one for you. Well, obviously, that one's in error. So I'm going to get reloaded and take another one. Well, I found that patch, and it's actually a little cleaner than the rest of them. Go figure. Well, looks like I got you a good number there, 16.29. Well, as you guys can tell, the breeze has been picking up a little bit more, but there's that patch, and it's, I dare say it's even cleaner than the previous patch. But that's the difference between weighing your charges and burning that extra powder to get, you know, more feet per second, quite a bit really. And when I go back in the shop, I'll show you the difference in the targets, because there's a difference in the targets also. $16.62. Alright, I'm going to get everything packed up, get the target pulled, and I'll meet you into the shop for my final analysis regarding Mountain Man toilet paper, mullen. So just in case anybody's curious, took 1 hour to do that. Well, actually, it took a little less than an hour. But the biggest thing is it's 80 degrees. So my finishing temperature and all of this was 80 degrees, and it took a little less than an hour, about 45 minutes. So what do we got? I'm going to do the 80 grain static charge first. 5-shot average, 1601 with a spread of 85. And there's the target. You can kind of see static wise, doing the charge statically, that's the group. I'm not pleased with this group. If I was at a Mountain Man rendezvous and I was, you know, shooting at a paper target, that would be atrocious for me. If I was deer hunting, yeah, that's definitely a kill shot. No doubt in my mind. But again, static 80 grains, 1601 with a spread of 85. Now the 80 grains by weight. Okay. 5-shot average was 1802.4 with a spread of 38. There's that target. How do I feel about mullen? Well, obviously, based on the formula that I used, 78, 15, 11, if I were to make any more gunpowder from mullen, I would increase the potassium nitrate maybe to 80, 81 grams, just to equalize a little bit more the volume level of the charcoal of mullen. When I did that glass jar test, I'm guessing it's 42, 43, somewhere in that vicinity. So this is what I've said before. You know, even if you're going to go with the 7713 formula, it's really not necessary to lower your charcoal, because I left my charcoal the same place. I just increased the volume of potassium nitrate. And I still got 1802 with a 5-shot average, and the high being 1813, and the low being 1775. Everything else was in the 1800s. Okay. Do I think this gunpowder is excessively dirty? No, because I had no problem loading shot number 1 to shot number 11. Because remember, I had one error in there that showed 23 feet. So with all 11 charges, I didn't experience any loading difficulties at all. Okay, that's not to say you won't, but I use a spit patch. And I showed you guys the spit patches. I don't have them. Oh, wait a minute. I do have them right here. Okay. Let's see here. Let me separate these. Okay. This was the mullen that was static. That was the last shot, the shot number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the mullen, 80 grains by weight, shot number 5. Shot number 6 right here, shot number 5. There's no difference in them. They look a little dirtier when they're wet and I pick them up off the ground because, as I showed and I've tried to explain before, don't judge your gunpowder, you know, when it's wet. Wait till they dry out a little bit and then look at the patch, and then you can kind of see a little bit better how dirty your gunpowder really is in that barrel. So I would dare say that this is a fairly clean burning gunpowder. I like the feet per second that I got with it. The 5-shot average, 1805, going 80 grains by weight. And that's why I keep saying, guys, that if you're gonna test your homemade gunpowder against a factory gunpowder, do the weight. Don't do it by volume, because, you know, if I were to go, 80 grains by volume of Swiss and get 1900 feet per second, and then turn around and do 80 grains by volume of mullen, well, you can see I'm short a couple hundred feet. But yet, weighing it out and settling it and weighing it, I get 1802. So I'm pretty impressed with that. Yes, Swiss might have been a little bit more powerful, but you got to remember, Swiss is using a heavy graphite glazing, which adds an added explosive material to your gunpowder that's not on your homemade gunpowder, at least not on mine. So anyhow, as you all know, I got a gun to go clean. So thanks for watching, and the next time you're in the woods looking for mountain man toilet paper, don't just stop at the leaves. Look at those stalks. You just might be impressed with the charcoal source that I have been with this. Thanks for watching, and everybody have a great day. Bye.